Hello, Maya TV. Welcome back. I'm Jessica Haro, and I'm here with a very special guest. This is Vanessa Ament. She's a very prolific Foley artist as well as singer-songwriter. Vanessa, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's very nice to meet you, Jessica.
So, Vanessa, tell us about how you came into the world of Foley.
This is a really weird story because I had gotten a degree in theater with a minor in music. I was a singer, nightclub singer actually, and had done theater. And while I was in a musical, somebody had said to me, actually it was a musical director, said, I know somebody who does Foley. And I went, oh, I don't know what that is. And he said, well, they're actually looking for somebody to learn it, to back her up in case she has to do 2 shows. And this was back when the show Dallas was on TV. And I said, I don't know what that is. And he said, well, they're looking for somebody to work with her and back her up on it in case she has 2 shows and they need a backup. And I said, okay. And so I went and interviewed. And I guess they had told them that I had done it before. This was at a place called Gomillion Sound, which no longer is there. But this was down on McCadden in Hollywood. And they hired me at a lower rate to learn it and back her up. Her name was Kim Fowler, in case she had more than 1 show to do. And now I thought it was going to be something I did in between acting and singing auditions and gigs, because I wanted to be an actor and I was a singer. But what ended up happening was it became more and more, they needed more shows. They needed me to do more. They needed me to do more. And I ended up kind of being good at it. This was right after the episode of Who Shot JR. And anybody that was a fan of the show Dallas remembers Who Shot JR. It was the mistress, by the way. And
oh, spoilers, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's okay. It was Mary Crosby, Bing Crosby's daughter, played the mistress, Kristen. And I ended up actually taking over that job. She went on to other things, and I ended up working for Lorimar Television with Jim Bailey, who was the other Foley artist, and we ended up doing the show. And then I worked with Lorimar Television being a Foley artist. Now here's what was weird. I ended up being a Foley artist primarily. And so then I was a Foley artist who was still trying to do musical theater and acting. And so I was in plays at night and doing cabaret shows and singing. Mm-hmm. And it became a thing. And I mean a thing. It became the primary thing I did. So then I ended up working with Horta Editorial, doing television shows. And I worked with stuff at Columbia, which then became Sony, doing features. And before I knew it, I was doing Foley primarily, a Foley artist, and that is the footsteps, cloth, and props. In sync to picture, in post-production sound with the sound editors, they would cut in what you cut in for sound, and I was performing the footsteps, cloth, and props in sync to picture. And this was back in the day when everything was on magnetic film, which was analog, and you're editing on mag. And so your sync had to be really good. It was before we're doing things on digital. And I started working with some of the very best, amazing sound editors and became really good at it. And I worked with some of the very best award-winning people, and it became the main thing I did. So then acting and musical theater and singing and songwriting and working in cabaret and nightclubs became the secondary thing. What ended up happening was I married David Stone, who is an Academy Award-winning now sound editor. He got the Academy Award for Bram Stoker's Dracula for sound effects in 1993 for 1992. And I had also ended up doing voices for film and casting them, doing automated dialogue replacements. So it became my primary thing. Mm-hmm. And the music became secondary and the acting became secondary. And that's what happens when you don't quite know what is going to happen with your life. And that's the short version.
So for those who aren't familiar with Foley, can you explain how it works,
Sure.
why it's so needed? Because I'm sure a lot of people think, oh, they just film it and they use the audio when they film it.
Yeah.
That's not really how it works.
And they do. So in production, and remember now we're in the digital age, but in production, you do your best to capture with production mixing all of the sound you can possibly get. You try to record it and mix it properly in production. But you're focused on the dialogue. You're focused on capturing dialogue. So the production mixer is trying to get the dialogue, and when you're trying to get dialogue, you're not focused on the prop work that actors are doing. You're not focused on their footsteps. You're not focused on anything else. You're focused on getting the dialogue really beautiful. You're also focused on a lot of different takes. You're focused on all of the different angles and then editing that in post-production with the picture editing. When that happens, the sound isn't going to match, or you're going to enhance it or change it. Or if you're doing a submarine sound, they're not walking in a submarine, they're walking in a studio. So you have to replace the footsteps and make it sound like it's a submarine. Or you have to make it sound like it's happening on a surface that it didn't really happen on the soundstage. And that's where we Foley artists come in. We are replacing the footsteps to make it sound like the character is in the magical space of the film, the story world, not the actual studio, not the soundstage. And then we are reproducing the props the way they would sound in that magical story world. Or for example, in the movie Die Hard, which is one of the big ones that I worked on, we are making it sound like that Nagatami's Plaza, where everything is happening the way you are seeing it in the film. And it's cutting through all of that amazing music. And he really is going through the air conditioning vent, or he really is in an elevator shaft. So we are enhancing all of the sound, and we're working with the sound editors who are cutting in the sound. So we're working alongside them on our Foley stage, which is named after the man Jack Foley, who devised this technique back when sound first came in, right after the jazz singer, when they start to add sound in film. So it's a process that's developed over decades.
Now, the magic of Foley is that what you think you're hearing isn't always what you're actually using, right?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if you use what actually it is, it might not really have the theatrical sound. It might sound flat, and it may not be really the right sound. Or if you're on a Foley stage, it may not record really as wonderfully. I remember being on David Letterman in 1989, and I was trying to demonstrate how we sometimes would use big pen tops in water in a glass to sound like ice. And he said, why not use ice cubes? And you can, but ice does melt. And when you re-record it over and over, the sound of it will change, or it may not record exactly the way you want it to sound. And maybe it will. You don't always know. You're going to use what you can, but you do want it to make it sound a little more interesting and theatrical and to fit into the story world. Because remember, we're making a movie and we want it to sound right. And then there's animation and there's fantasy and there's action. And all of these people that are doing all of these kinds of films are adding in something special. And remember, guns don't make the kind of noise that they do in movies. So we are rattling them just a little more to make them sound a little more threatening. And the footsteps need to sound like the characters that the actors are doing. So we are trying to embody the magic of what the character is doing. We are supporting what the actor is doing with the character. We are doing the sonic performance of the actor, what the actor's doing. And that's what the Foley part is doing. So that's how my career in film started, because I started out as a singer. I was a nightclub singer. That's how I started out.
So since you have this background in music, did that help a lot when you were creating all these sounds?
Yes, and in fact, I got a PhD in film after I wrote the Foley Grail, which was the quintessential book on Foley. And basically, I just wanted the world to know what Foley artists did, but it turned out to be a thing. And now it's in its third edition, and it's all over the world. So I have a podcast myself called Holy Foley, WHOLE-Y Foley, that's on YouTube and on your favorite podcast, talking with people all over the world in performative sound for film. It could be Foley artists or editors or musicians that do sound. And I talked to people all over the world, and they all know about the book, The Foley Grail, because I interviewed people doing film sound and game sound and animation sound and Foley and editing everywhere and voices everywhere to talk about film sound, because it is such an important part of movies. And what you see is enhanced by what we hear, because when we're in utero, sound is our first experience with life, not what we see. So sound becomes such a supportive part of the story world. And what it has become is such an important part of movie making. See how excited I get. But whatever your background was, whether you were an actor or a singer or a musician, or I interviewed one person who actually was a rapper. He was a rapper and became a Foley artist. And that informed the way that he approached being Foley. He's in another country, but he was a rapper. So all of this informs the way that you approach doing Foley. It's really actually quite astounding.
So you've had a prolific career of working on all sorts of films and shows. What were some of the most challenging to work on?
Well, Platoon was really amazing because it's women doing all of that Foley. It was Allison Moore and Hilda Hodges and me doing all of those guys in the Vietnam War, doing all of that Foley for that amazing film. And we're doing all of those heavy footsteps and all of that gear that they're carrying and the gun life and all of that stuff. And I remember watching the first reel. It was when we're still working in MAG. We watched the first 10 minutes and I turned to everybody and I went, I have this really strange feeling this is going to get Best Picture, because even that first 10 minutes was so riveting. And then there was Die Hard, and there's a Goofy movie, Predator, Sex, Lies, and Videotape was a film I worked on, and I worked with Steven Soderbergh, and he was nobody then, but I remember that I talked about that film on the Letterman show in 1989, right after it won the Palme d'Or, and he is Soderbergh, we call him Soderbergh, but Steven is such a wonderful, authentic, sincere, amazing filmmaker. And then Tim Burton working on Edward Scissorhands and Batman Returns, and he's a very special person because he's so inventive and he has so much respect for people in sound. And I remember hearing people talk about him in spotting sessions where he starts saying all of the normal things you do in sound, and then he turned to them and go, you guys know how to do all this. I'll just tell you the special things I need. He's a wonderful person to work with. So there are a lot of films like that. There have been so many. I was lucky enough to work on the first part of the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which was a delightful film to work on. And I got to work with the people that had worked with Alan Splett. And Alan Splett had done all of the David Lynch films. And that was up in the Bay Area when I was working on a master's degree. And I worked with all of the amazing people at Skywalker. And when I was up there in the Bay Area, and got to work with the way they do things, which was very different because the Bay Area does things differently than LA. And I've worked with the people, knowing the people in New York who also do things differently. And there's just such an astounding group of people. I can't even remember. I've worked on so many projects because it's been hundreds of films and television. You'd have to, look up the IMDb to see them all, but they're just astounding, gifted people that people don't really realize how hard people work in film, and post-production sound does not get the appreciation because it's not the above-the-line people that you see on film, but they are truly astounding people to work with.
Yeah, I think most people, they don't notice when it's good sound. They absolutely notice when it's bad
when it's awful.
Sound. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like when the footsteps really don't seem to work right, or that door just didn't feel right. As a matter of fact, I wrote a musical that I'm working on right now. I'm doing a concept album for it. It's called Holy Foley, but it's H-O-L-Y. Holy Foley! H-O-L-Y, Foley with an exclamation point. And I'm doing a concept album, and that's when you have all the singers sing the songs, and I wrote the songs for it, and the libretto, I had to write the libretto, and actually it's coming out really well. And it takes place on a Foley stage, and I'm bringing together the stories of my world, the people I know, the stories other Foley artists have told me, the stories of what's happened at studios when they've shut down one Foley stage but kept the other one going, the people that I've known, composites of people, and written the songs because I started out as a singer who wrote songs. And I've got some wonderful, amazing talent from New York, from Broadway, and from LA, amazing singers working on it right now. And we are finishing up the singing, and we're going to be putting some special instruments on it. And that musical is about the world of Foley, and there will be Foley demonstrated in it, and you get to see the Foley, you get to hear stories of Foley artists and their struggles and their joys. And it's kind of my love letter. It's a backstage musical, but it's my love letter to this wonderful craft. And so that's where I bring the singer in me, the musician in me, the songwriter in me, and my experiences with my Foley artists, colleagues, and the life on the Foley stage. And we even have a song called Jack Foley Was the Guy, where I bring in my work studying about Jack Foley when I wrote the Foley Grail, and then all my work when I got my PhD and was teaching students about sound and Foley and film. It's all in there. It's kind of, I guess, the final thing I'm doing, because as I teach about musicals and I work on a musical and I've worked in Foley, it's putting it all together. So as you get older, you start thinking about, what can I do to bring this together and leave something that will matter? And that's what happens when you get older. When you're young, you're thinking about, what can I do to express and do something that's fulfilling? And then when you get older, you think, what can I do that is a culmination of what I think might matter? And I think that's what's happening now with having written these books, because I've written several about film sound, starting with the Foley Grail, and then my dissertation that got turned into Divergent Tracks, which talks about analog sound going to digital sound and editing, sound editing, and then the articles and all of that being a PhD, and then the podcast, Holy Foley, and now the musical. It's this culmination, because you get older and you start thinking, what does it all mean? What does it all mean? And you're young, and I remember that feeling, but I'm getting older. And now I'm thinking, how does it all come together? And for me, it all comes together with the stories of the Foley stage, the people I've known, who Jack Foley was, how did the songs tell the story, what did it all come about, and what does it all mean really? And what is the importance, and what can we learn from it? And that's kind of where I'm at now with all of it.
Yeah, so after all your experience as a Foley artist, as well as researching for books, for documentaries you've worked on, you're now sharing that knowledge as a teacher.
Yeah.
So could you tell us about the course that you have coming up?
Oh, yeah. So this is a year, boy. This is a year. You know, I have an article that's been come out. I just got notified today from a woman in Prague who I interviewed on my podcast, who interviewed me about the Foley Grail and wrote an article about it that just came out. I designed a musical that was on Turner Classic Movies called Mad About Musicals in 2018. I have now repurposed a lot of it and expanded it and changed it to be more academic. And it's coming out on edX on Friday, which is this year's turning out to be a blockbuster already. And it's called The Magic of the American Film Musical. And it's about the beginning of the musical and how it develops. And I've turned it into something very academic, but really engaging. And anybody can take this musical course. And it's through edX. And you can learn about the musical, how it developed, and you watch some of these musicals, and you get to take this course. So that's coming out this week. On Friday, I think it's being released. So that's kind of neat. And then working on, I'm doing some stuff for older people through Osher out in the desert, because I live out near Palm Springs. and then working on this musical now, and then the podcast. So all of these things are happening all at once. And, the pandemic was something I think that made all of us question what matters to us. Whether you were young or in the middle years or getting older like I am. I'm not rickety yet, but I'm getting there. And it's all starting to come together where I bring my love of musicals and my singing and my writing, putting together this musical, teaching about musicals, and all of it has to do with Foley, which is this circle of coming together, bringing the musical and teaching and Foley all together, full circle. So I'm hoping that isn't portending anything about my life. I hope it's bringing together something that will be of beneficial use to people.
Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for talking to us about
Thank you,
Foley
Jessica.
and about musicals.
Thank you.
Where can our audience go to learn more about you and all the many things that you're working on?
Well, I have a website. It's called Foley Culture. So you can look up Foley Culture, and that's my website that kind of leads you to various things. And then my podcast, Holy, WHOLE-Y, Foley, which is on YouTube and on your favorite podcast. I'm going to be adding more things on it. I took a bit of a hiatus because I was working on putting this course together for edX and putting together the concept album, where we're going to be ramping up some more interviews. I'm going to be doing an homage to my mentor, Rick Altman, who is a polymath in film studies, who is the reason I went and got a PhD, and I'm going to be doing an homage to him. So that's going to be the next set of podcasts for Holy Foley, the podcast. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming here.
You're a delight.
Yes, it's
She
been
really
wonderful to
is.
talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. And stay tuned. We have a lot more great interviews coming up throughout this season. Bye.